And so small was this bump, which she always described as being like a train pulling into a station, it didn't even slop the orange juice over the top. And so anyone else would have thought it was just a little thing, it wouldn't matter, but to her, she knew this was the thing that was the end of everything for her.
Mrs. Hart woke her husband, who went up to the boat deck.
And he came back quite quickly, and he just said to her, you better put this thick coat on, I'll put another one on. And she just looked at him, and he put this coat on her. And do you know, years afterwards, I would say to her sometimes, I can't understand when he came back into the room why you didn't say to him, what is it, what's the matter? You wakened him, you sent him up on deck. And in that lovely calm voice that my mother had, she would say there was nothing to ask him. I didn't have to ask him what it was. I didn't know it was an iceberg, but I knew it was this something.
Benjamin Hart went down with the ship, but Eva's mother saved her little girl because she'd been expecting disaster.
And if my mother hadn't been sitting up that night, I wouldn't be here now. I owe my life to her premonition. Don't I?
American President Abraham Lincoln dreamed he saw his own coffin in the White House. Only days later, in April 1865, assassin John Wilkes Booth gunned him down in a Washington theatre. The dream had come tragically true. Another dream of the 1921 Grand National brought happier results. On Grand National Day, in the London Daily Graphic, columnist Hannon Swaffer reported that his friend Dennis Bradley had dreamed the result. Bradley said all the horses would fall except 3. The winner would be wearing tartan colours. Every detail came true. Only 3 horses finished, and winner Sean Spada carried tartan.
In most cases, premonition anecdotes cannot be accepted as proof, because they're usually told well after the event. Ideally, they should be written down and witnessed beforehand so that there's no possible doubt. And one man, a scientist, has attempted to do exactly that.
Peter Fairley collected premonitions of the 1966 Aberfan disaster. Errol May Jones dreamed something black engulfed her school. Hours later, she and her friends died when a coal tip collapsed. Intrigued, Fairley founded the Evening Standard Premonitions Bureau.
It had a simple function. That was to take from anybody a telephone call, a letter, whatever it may be, some form of premonition, and to note it down and to put a time and a date to that and a signature from us as independent observers that that was what they said on that day at that time. And that's all that the Bureau did. I had one call from a man who had seen the winner of the Grand National. He was quite convinced that he had dreamed this, and the reason why it made an impact on him was that he had seen the colours of the jockey's blouse and had then checked and found that the horse that was bearing those colours was called Foinaven. And anybody who remembers that particular Grand National remembers that Foinaven was almost the only horse that finished.
Watch the incredible pilot. Out of the shambles, one horse appeared, complete with rider, Foinaven.
A complete outsider at 100 to 1, Foinaven cruised home exactly as predicted.
In the course of all these replies that we had, there were some which were really very remarkable indeed. For instance, I've got some here. For instance, this is a woman who predicts that there will be hurricanes in Britain and that they will happen in January.
Postmistress Karen Butler sent in the hurricane prediction. It had come to her vividly on the evening of November the 11th, 1967.
Thank you.
Well, I was sitting one evening reading, and I began mentally to get the impression of very strong winds. They were really dreadful winds, very, very strong. And I could see roofs just disintegrating and flying off. I could see trees and branches crashing down. I could see huts and sheds just flying through the air. And I knew the winds were so strong, I said, it's a gale. No, it's not a gale, it's a hurricane. It's a hurricane. And then I said, oh, the people, the poor people. Well, my husband asked me, did I know where this was going to happen? And I said I thought it was in Britain somewhere, but I didn't know exactly where. Then he asked me, did I know when it was going to happen? I said it would be the middle of the month of January.
And on the 15th of January, a hurricane hit Glasgow. The city was devastated. Hurricanes are almost unknown in Britain, and the Premonitions Bureau sadly noted a hit.
Now, we did begin to find one or two people who seemed to be scoring well above average regularly. In fact, we sort of called them our stars. And Lorna Middleton was one of them. Now, this is one of her early ones, and as so often happens, it looks rather vague. She says that she's got headaches and symptoms that usually precede earthquakes. But it was 2 days later that a really massive earthquake hit Skopje.
Well, I rarely have a headache, perhaps 1 or 2 a year. And what I call my earthquake headache is a sharp pain which comes across the forehead, either to the right, to the left, or left to right. The one I particularly remember was the Yugoslav earthquake, because I predicted that about 48 hours before. And that was sent because I had a sharp pain crossing my head.
The problem with all these stars, as we called them, was that the moment that they started to know that we were interested in what they could do, and we started to investigate how they did things, it just went. And that, I think, has definitely come through all this to me as a firm conclusion, that if there is such a thing as premonition, it is something which is instantaneous. It is, if you like, a flash of intuition. It doesn't take any time, and if you ask anyone to apply any conscious thought to it, it actually just goes. You might as well pretend it's not there. They are imagining after that. But if they suddenly have it happen to them, it could be. And the other conclusion is that when it happens to you, it is an overpowering sensation. You know that it's going to happen. No matter what it is and how unlikely it is, you know it's going to happen.
Sadly, but not surprisingly, many premonitions aren't exactly what they appear to be. We all know how difficult it is to get the facts right, and everyone loves to embroider a good story. Sometimes a careful investigation reveals a very different picture.
I can see a little scenario, and it came first in my dreams right after he was elected, and it had to do with a gun, and it had to do with shots all over the place.
Professional psychic Tamara Rand made this prediction about President Reagan on American TV.
As I initially I felt it might actually be an assassination attempt or a shot to the president.
March the 30th, 1981. Tamara Rand's prediction looked horribly accurate, yet appearances were deceptive. In fact, the recording was made not on January the 6th, but on March the 31st.